Wow, haven't Xiaomi been busy little beavers? So many releases. And they're keeping us reviewers here quite busy. So of course, my Mi Lite here is a review unit that Xiaomi sent out to me in exchange for this video here. So what is special about this model here? Well, it is, as the name suggests, light. Not just the specs, but also the weight of it. It's a lightweight phone, 6.5 inches, nice and thin. And I do like the design and look of this one here. So it's powered by the Snapdragon 732G. The models will either come with 6 or 8 gigabytes of RAM, and we do have 128 gigabytes of UFS 2.2 storage, which my unit here has. The main camera on the rear is 64 megapixels. We have an 8 megapixel ultra wide, 5 megapixel for macro, so very similar setup that I've seen before in the K40 Pro. And our front facing camera, this one for your selfies in the cutout there with the 90 Hertz screen. This is a 16 megapixel camera. Inside the box, you will find our 33-watt charger. Now, this does take about an hour approximately. I'll give you the exact time in this review. A Type-C to Type-A cable for data and charging. We do have a Type-C to 3.5mm adapter, a TPU case, which is a clear style one, fits the phone perfectly, and they include a screen protector. This time around, it is not applied, and a warranty card. So you can see why the Mi 11 Lite has the name, not just because of the specs being lower end compared to the other Mi 11 phones, but because it's actually lightweight, 157 grams. First thing I noticed when I pulled it out of the box is this has a very, very good weight to it. Feels great in hand, and it is slim. So this is 6.18 millimeters, where the camera does stick out and protrude a little bit. That then brings it up to approximately 10 millimeters. So the build, there's been a bit of debate about this, but it is plastic frame around the outside. That's why we have no antenna lines. Inner frame is alloy. If you look at the SIM tray, when you pull it out, you can look and peek inside a little bit, and you see the inner alloy and then the plastic over the top. And then this is a glossy, smooth paint like metallic finish they put over the top of the plastic. So it does give it a very, very solid feel in hand. Now, access to the power button and the capacitive always on fingerprint reader, very easy to get to it. And you can see that the animation slows it down a little bit. You hear the audio first, and there's about a half a second or so delay from everything coming in. So it is a quick and accurate fingerprint reader, and I do like the placement. Volume up and down button there, that is made out of metal. And then on the bottom, you will find then the loudspeaker. So single firing downwards loudspeaker here, but the earpiece also doubles as a secondary loudspeaker for us. So it's dual loudspeakers. Type-C port, USB 2 spec. It does not support video out. We have a microphone and then our SIM tray, which takes 2 nano SIMs. If you flip it over, however, you can then use a micro SD card, but you need to give up on one of those nano SIMs, of course, to do so. Up the top, we have an IR transmitter and a secondary mic that's used for noise cancellation and in video. So we have a very good screen in this phone, 6.55 inches, a little smaller than the other models. And you can see the bezels around the side and the chin, they're not too bad. Now, full HD resolution, so it's nothing new here. That's 2400 by 1080. And the brightness is really good, extremely good. So over 1,000 nits that I'm measuring, about 1,010. In direct sunlight, the sunlight legibility is really good, as you can see here. No dimming when it gets hot in the sun either so far from my tests, but it has been a bit overcast lately, and I managed to grab this clip while the sun was out. So in the color scheme modes here, you can change and adjust everything here. You can keep it on auto, you've got your saturation. What is missing, and one thing I like to see that I point out in basically all my videos now with AMOLED screens, DC dimming, does it have it? Unfortunately not. So at lower brightnesses, some people are very sensitive to this. You might see a little bit of that, the banding coming through. I don't see it at lower brightnesses, and ghosting on this panel, I'm not seeing too much of an issue with that either. So it's a good screen, and of course it's at 90 Hertz. You can override it and set it to 60 if you wanted to save on some battery. Touch response with this screen is 240 Hertz, and I find it to be very responsive. No troubles triggering gestures. That all works just fine with this. So this phone is running Android 11. It's MIUI 12.05. and I found the performance so far is very, very good. It's running the UI at 90 frames per second. Everything's quick and smooth and fluid. Now, I do have the 8 gigabytes of RAM with this particular model, which will aid in that smoothness that I'm getting with this model. So it's got Android security patch level from February, which is good. So it's not really out of date at all. We're in March still, at least at the moment. And everything is just so quick and snappy launching. Now, I have noticed that certain applications will be running at 60 frames per second and not 90. Like if you go into like something like YouTube comments, you will see this. Task Manager can be a little aggressive, the RAM management killing things off in the background. Now the haptics, to talk about the haptics motor on this one right here, it is nothing special. When typing away, you get a nice little vibration, but I wouldn't rate it as, it's just average, really. It's not that amazing. Now, with the dialer here, you cannot record calls. We don't have that feature anymore with MIUI 12. That sadly is gone. And when you power up your nice new shiny phone, you will be greeted with this unfortunate amount of bloatware. There are quite a few apps on there. You can see little games and all sorts of stuff that you probably wouldn't use. Now, I uninstalled them. It's very easy. Just go in apps, and then in apps, you go to the uninstall mode and just tick them all. And in 2 minutes, you can get rid of them. But I counted about 25 bloatware applications and quite a large 2.14 gigabytes worth of bloatware crammed on there. So I really hope, Xiaomi, if you are watching my videos, please do tone down on the ads as well and the bloatware. So these are the ads that come through. So there's a few system apps like Cleaner, the installer, that will present you ads once you use it, which is slightly annoying. You can see that came up there, something about I don't know what that is, about cleaning your teeth or something, with teeth whitening. And here we have the internal storage speed. So UFS 2.2 and really quite good. The random reads and writes there. That's not going to be bottlenecking or holding up this phone, which is good. It's the chipset. Now, this is unexpected. Lately, they have been so good with Widevine level 1 certs on all of their phones. And at the time of me reviewing this one, it's a level 3. Now, in the past, they have fixed this with various different phones, and they've gone along like the Poco F2 and others. They would go and fix it, and hopefully, cross my fingers, we are going to get a Widevine level 1 because it's a nice screen. I want to have Amazon Prime in full HD, not standard definition. Camera 2 API support, tick, level 3, all good. GPS, very good. Average signal strength there. 37.2. It is really excellent. I've seen some phones that are in the yellow with the average signal strength. So this one's performing well, but the accuracy will not be any better than 3 meters being Qualcomm. Wireless speeds, as expected with this chipset, they are somewhat limited. We'll probably a limit here with the ROM as well. So they'll max out about 200 megabits per second, which is okay. And the Antutu score, nearing up towards 300,000 points. Isn't bad for the 732G. And we do have a runtime here with my fixed battery life test that I run in all my reviews. This display is calibrated to 200 nits of brightness, and it ran for 10 hours and 4 minutes. And real world use, you're looking around 6 to 7 hours of on-screen time I've calculated with this. So it's not a battery champion, but it's enough for most users to be able to get through a full day, definitely, I think, with this battery capacity. And the battery going from 7% to 100 took 61 minutes there to fully charge at 33 watts. Onto our audio quality. So I have tested out voice calls and it sounds just fine to me. Good quality from the earpiece. Sadly, no 3.5mm headphone jack, so I had to use this, of course, the adapter, the Type-C to 3.5, and it sounds excellent. Very good, high quality sound. Loudness is decent, nice and crisp and clear. The loudspeakers, I'll give you a sample of them now at 100% volume, do sound pretty good for the size of the phone. So sound comes out the front here, down the bottom. Good loudness and a little hint of bass to it. But here it is now at 100% volume. Onto PUBG gameplay. So with the resolution options here, if you set it onto smooth or balanced, we have the ultra frame rate option, But if you want to use HD, that then lowers the frame rate. So what I'll do is I'll try balanced and ultra and see what kind of performance I can expect here from the Mi 11 Lite running PUBG. So the PUBG performance is as expected. We've got a frame rate of around about 41, 42, 43, 45 at times. When there's a bit of action going on, it does drop down to 30 frames per second. That's the lowest I have seen. So all up, it is playable when you look down the sights and things and look around. I'm not seeing any noticeable huge amounts of lag or anything like that. It's just occasionally it will have those frame dips with this Snapdragon 732G. Now the gameplay with this one, it seems to be relatively smooth. It does dip down to about 20 frames per second, the lowest I've seen it when it needs to load something in. And the gameplay seems to be good enough. At the lowest possible settings is what I'm running with 60 frames per second option there. So it's playable, very, very good actually, considering this is, well, it's not a powerful chip. And right now my frame rate is 53 frames per second. Alright, so it has been an hour now. Looking at the temperature, so ambient temperatures at the moment in the studio here are about 20 degrees. So 45, maybe almost up to 45 degrees on the screen, and around the frame feels a little warm. What about on the back of it? So we can see where the chipset is, located very close to those camera modules there, and temperatures looking to be about, well, around about the same 40s, mid-40s there. So not too bad. I mean, it's a very demanding game, and at least it's not getting up to 50 degrees like the flagships do. Moving over to our cameras now, and video performance first up. So 1080p maximum with the front-facing camera here. 30 frames per second has electronic image stabilization. So I jog ahead, you can see that yes, it's definitely stabilized. Now if I was to shoot with 1080p 60, there is no electronic image stabilization. Audio bitrate is a little low as well. It's only 96 kilobits per second, and ideally I would like to see them use on their low-end phones at least 192 kilobits per second to get improved audio quality, because it does sound a little bit scratchy. So with our main camera we have 4K 30 frames per second with electronic image stabilization. There's no 4K 60 option with this chipset and the sensor. Quality's not too bad with the electronic image stabilization. It looks reasonably sharp. And just a short jog ahead demonstrating how that electronic image stabilization works. So no optical image stabilization with this phone. With the ultra-wide camera we can shoot 1080p 30 frames per second only. The quality, as expected, is not as good as the main lens. It does have electronic image stabilization, and throughout all the video we are only going to get that 96 kilobits per second. Alright, I like the design of this one. I really do. I love the weight. It's a nice change from all the 200 and 220 and 196 gram phones that I've been reviewing that have been a little bit more chunkier. And that's probably, a lot of people will go for this just because it has this nice build. So glass on the back, they don't state whether it's Gorilla Glass. I don't believe it is. It could be Dragon Tail, but Gorilla Glass is present on the front with the 6.5-inch screen. Fast, smooth ROM, so it is quite good. I'm not seeing any of those lags or micro stutters in MIUI 12. They seem to have finally cured that. Crossing my fingers here. I don't want to speak too soon. Touching wood as well on that one. Now, performance isn't amazing, but I think for most people, the 732G from Qualcomm, the Snapdragon there, is sufficient and enough. Gaming performance, okay, if you play PUBG and you want to run the highest settings and the good frame rates, then sadly it's not really the phone for that. But still, gaming, it's okay, the performance there. It can even run Genshin Impact as I showed you. Thermals are good. I don't think this chipset is really powerful enough to generate those 50 degrees Celsius that I'm seeing with the flagships. This one gets up to 45. Now in the camera department, with the samples that I showed you, that it can take a good day still. The ultra wide is the weakness, 8 megapixels. It gets a little blurry around the edges of the lens there. Selfies look okay, portraits, they're quite good too. And even the low light is not too bad considering the spec and the price of this phone. So overall, the battery life too, being quite good, around 10 hours. That was with my test, but realistically, you're looking around a 7-hour on-screen time if you use a lower brightness, that is, and you're not gaming. If you're gaming, then it'll be about 5 hours flat out. You'll burn straight through it with this one. So what are the things I don't like? Well, there's no Widevine level 1 cert with this, which was a surprise to me because Xiaomi have been very good, especially with the global releases. We normally have the level 1 cert, so I'm quite certain that will probably come with an update. Audio bitrate, this, I know I rant about this a little bit, but 96 kilobits per second. They only reserve the higher bit rates, unfortunately, for their flagship phones now, so I believe it will be stuck on the 96, which sounds a little bit scratchy. So 60 frames per second 1080p video doesn't have electronic image stabilization. The front-facing camera does, 4K on the rear does, and the quality is reasonably good there. So in the camera department, I think most people will be pleased with what is on offer here. Now there is no 3.5mm jack support with this one, headphone jack, and that is another surprise. I thought it would have that. And then Xiaomi, please, can we tone down a little bit on the bloatware? Every time I review a new phone from them, there seems to be an additional 1 or 2 apps on there, and if we keep up at this rate, when I'm still reviewing these phones in 2030, I'll be counting maybe 50 additional bloatware applications. No, I'm only joking, but I would love them to clean up a little bit on that. And the adverts, the advertising in some of the system apps, which is like Cleaner and the installer one, I would like to see that disappear. I think we pay the price for the phone. Why are we subjected to adverts in the ROM is another criticism there from me. So thank you so much for watching my review here of the Mi 11 Lite. Do check out my other Xiaomi videos you can see up here. And I will hopefully be also reviewing the Mi 11 Ultra, which looks like an absolute camera monster of a phone. That, of course, is their top dog flagship.